Call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone online and those of you here in attendance. Mission and vision statement. The mission of the Nampa School District is to ensure high levels of achievement for every student. Vision statement. Every student is fully engaged in extraordinary learning experiences, preparing for successful transition to the next stage of life.
All right, our student presentation is the Nampa High cheerleaders, and I think that Kelly is joining us online.
That is correct.
Mr. Yarrow, do you have any other thoughts or introduction?
Yeah,
Please do.
Chairwoman Simpson, trustees, thanks for the opportunity tonight. We're going to share with you tonight the Nampa High cheer team. The Nampa High cheer team is represented by two amazing coaches and women, Dr. Kelly Rich and her assistant Stephanie Higgins, who embody what it means to be a caring adult in our district about how to take care of kids. And I asked Dr. Rich to help bring forward the cheer team for number one, their success in what they do. They're an extracurricular club. They placed the state runners up this year. So an amazing accomplishment, which has become kind of the tradition with Dr. Rich and her program there. And then secondly, we've had numerous examples throughout this year and even before COVID, where the cheer team, because of those ladies and their leadership, have helped with various times with kids for SEL work and SEL support in a way that exemplifies how we catch kids and how it's important to keep them involved. So I wanted her to highlight that tonight. And also their academic performance. They are among the top kids in our school when it comes to academic performance in challenging courses. And we have a wide gamut from freshmen all the way up through seniors. So truly proud of the Nampa High cheer team and Nampa High in general, but wanted to highlight them and appreciate all the work that they put in for where they're at. So they're going to join us. They're actually at their awards banquet tonight. So they're going to be speaking to us in just a moment. So thank you.
Is that our turn?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Chair and members of the board, thank you so much for allowing us to be here. As Mr. Yarbrough said, we are at our banquet, so everyone is filtering in to have a good time tonight and celebrate our success. And we just want to take a moment to share our gratitude with you and give you just a little picture into our journey this season. So I would like to start by just kind of expressing how Coach Higgins and I were very purposeful in our attention to the athletes' mental health this year. It was at the forefront of our minds. It was what we were always thinking of. And with that, we were very intentional about the way that we problem solved each and every pivot, turn, flexible moment in our season. Our season is very long. It starts in May when we have tryouts, which is all virtual. And then we were allowed to get together in July, which was really, really wonderful. And then it just keeps going and keeps on moving through until the middle of March. So our purpose was to make sure that all of our athletes knew that we were problem solving until we didn't have to problem solve anymore, and that we were going to set the pathway for them to be successful. And there was a very critical moment in our season when you allowed us to travel to Jerome. And I'm going to ask my athlete Sydney to share with you how that impacted our team and our success.
Cheerleading, in my opinion, is all about crowd involvement. Finally being able to see and hear a crowd that was so excited to watch us perform not only uplifted our team's spirits, but sent our team's energy through the roof. It showed us that a year of hard work had finally paid off. Being able to travel and finally perform in front of a crowd was a critical part in our cheerleading journey this year.
Yeah, it truly was. When we got back from Jerome, we did a couple more virtual competitions, and our districts was actually virtual. District 3 was the only virtual in the state of Idaho. So we mustered up all of our energy that we could And again, we appreciate that you allowed fans to be in our gymnasiums, because that provided a crowd for our kids, and it really helped them through that last little phase of getting through districts. And we won. We are 3 years in a row of district champions, and that provided us an opportunity to go to state. And I'm telling you, the energy that came out of these athletes going into state was absolutely incredible. To watch their journey through all of these uphill battles. And I tell you what, the District 3 athletes had a mountain to climb that looked like this. I don't know if y'all can see me, but like our mountain in District 3 in the Treasure Valley looks like this, compared to the Eastern Idaho schools, which is kind of like a little bump for them. And it was just amazing to watch them stay together, work hard. And I really, truly attribute our success being that we create a culture where we're a family and we care about each other, and we take everyone's truly their mental health into consideration. And there were just so many opportunities that we were very grateful for your support in keeping our team banded together. And I know that all of the other athletes in our school share the same sentiment. So when we were at state, we walked in, and it's at the Idaho Center, and we're back behind this giant curtain. And we were one of the first couple teams to go first in our warm-up. And so our team is down on the cement area, and all the competitors are around. And it was like this giant fishbowl of just watching our kids warm up. And previously that week, I heard through the grapevine that the Bonneville Bees shouted Nampa at their little gathering, where they had to say what team gives you the most competition, and Nampa, everything was all about Nampa. So it felt really great to know that they got to see who Nampa truly was, and it lit a fire. And I'm going to let Allison talk to you about how we did at state and what was our success.
Yeah, just being at state was just such a surreal feeling. I remember waiting on the warm-up mats, talking to the freshmen about how excited and nervous they were to finally perform at state for the first time and in front of such a big crowd. We performed, and I knew that our team was super confident in the way that we placed, and that we were united and confident in the way that we performed. We did end up getting second, only losing by 1 point against Bonneville, which, like she said, was our biggest competition. I was confident in our team, knowing that we did get first in show, which is a huge division and it's super hard, which is an accomplishment for our team, considering that was the routine that we did struggle with the most this summer. So I would say that state was a huge accomplishment, and I'm proud of our team in the way that we finished.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our journey. I am so appreciative of you guys taking the time to hear our success, and we truly are grateful for the opportunities. I know that this whole year has just been jam-packed of really tough conversations, and I know that they weren't easy, and I just want you to know that we appreciate it. We appreciate all of the efforts to keep us safe, the efforts to put protocols in place, and just then also those efforts to allow us to stay in contact with our kids and to keep them moving forward towards their goals. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, trustees. Any questions, comments?
Just congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Huge accomplishment in a rough year, so you guys are awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Excellent work.
Enjoy your rest of your banquet.
Yeah.
Yes, we're hungry and we want to go celebrate.
Thank you.
All right, bye. Thank you, Mr. Yarbrough, for introducing us.
Chairman Simpson, Eric is not able to be with us tonight, so we do not have any NEA comments.
Okay, thank you. Any trustee comments? We'll start over here with trustee Westfall.
No comments.
No comments.
I have a few things just to report on April. I was able to walk Columbia. You'll notice my Columbia face mask with Chair Simpson and Dr. Russell. back on the 7th. We get to see their intervention and advising structure. It's truly excellent. Vice principals Nick Stern and Stephanie Doobie hosted us. Did I say Dr. Russell was there too? I meant to, okay. And they've just done great work incenting kids to come on Wednesdays and tracking kids in the building, helping them set goals for each day, and then closing the loop with follow-up, making sure that they have accomplished what they set out to. They've even developed their own app. Mr. Hibbard, I think is the right name attached to that, to check kids in and out and track them in the building. It's really amazing, just wonderful, wonderful stuff. So thank you, Columbia, for what they did. I was able to, thanks Napa School District for allowing me to go to the National School Board Association Conference virtually, April 8th through 10th. I think Trustee Westfall.
No, I wasn't.
We weren't able to attend. It was a great conference. It was worth my time. It was worth my investment. Thanks to NSD. I was drawn toward the conversation, kind of the breakouts about governance, superintendent board relationships, and evaluation conversations. And I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights. There's so much I could share, but I'll just share a couple of things, I promise, Chair. First of all, just a statistic. There's 51 million public school students in the US. I was just like, wow. Second thing, in a breakout regarding board governance and creating a governance culture on the board. Listen to this, trustees. This will surprise you. It surprised me, and I just pushed back in my chair and said, wow. Sun Prairie, South Dakota School District Board didn't vote on school being open or what mode it would be in once during the pandemic. They created a policy and they let the superintendent and team manage it. And I just thought, what a difference that could make on a district. It was beautiful. One of the keynote speakers, Sean Aker, he was a keynote. He is a former Harvard faculty person for 12 years. He's a researcher on the power of positivity. And he discussed if a person cultivates a positive outlook through the most simple of behaviors, such as listing 3 things one is grateful for each day while brushing your teeth, like the NASA astronauts do. In as little as 21 days, their overall health and well-being improves on almost all measures. Just the power of positivity. Anyway, there was wonderful things. There's just a few little highlights. Last thing I'll share is on Monday the 12th, I got to participate in the federal program's annual review. Just a couple of really impressive things there. We have 500 migrant families that we work with, and the migrant student graduation rate is in the mid to high 90s. It's really impressive. We have 940 students in SD who are experiencing homelessness, and that is a terrible number. And then a dream. We'll talk tonight about the Georgia Triangle triplex or duplex house. And wouldn't it just be wonderful if that house could be the solution for a few families that experience homelessness in it. So just a few random things, but thank you, Chair Simpson and those trustees.
Thank you. Yeah, I went to Columbia High School as well. I just wanted to let you know that the presentation that we got to see is what is linked in the board docs there. And I just lost the name. Corey Wilston-Hume.
Nick Stern.
Nick Stern, thank you. I was wanting to give him a different last name. Nick Stern and Stephanie Doobie all invited all of us back anytime on Wednesday. Just let them know and talk to the superintendent. She can help get that set up if you are interested in going to see. Thank you for attending NSBA for us and learning some things and then sharing those things with us. I really appreciate that. Public comments.
We do have someone online.
Okay. Do we know, is it?
John Buckridge.
Sorry, what was the name?
John Buckridge.
John Buckridge, okay.
He was there. Yeah. There he is.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thankfully, technology's working then. Good evening, Dr. Keller, Madam Chair, trustees, and those in attendance. I come today to speak on behalf of our students regarding the possibility of changing the Wednesday schedule. Many of our students have found that using Wednesday as a day to get specific help from teachers and catch up on their coursework has been beneficial. I agree with that sentiment. But I feel as if we're going to make decisions on behalf of the students, we need to hear their voices. And I bring a few of those to you today. Ashlyn Nichols says, the schedule's been changed about 6 times, and the seniors and even underclassmen have been put through a lot this year. And I know personally Wednesdays help a ton with my assignment management because I have kind of a free day to do my homework, get help, and catch up on college stuff I need to finish. The stress of this year has taken a toll on our students, and they do not see any value in changing the schedule again this close to the end of the school year. A student at Nampa High who wished to remain anonymous explains the toll this has had on their mental health by saying, the recent idea of returning to school on Wednesdays is not necessary for the remaining couple of weeks of the 2020 and 2021 school year. People, students especially, have had a difficult time managing their lives with jobs and schoolwork, moving their schedules around every 2 months due to a new change in school. And all these changes are beginning to feel hopeless and really affect our mental health. I think it's important for us to remember that another schedule change for these students has far-reaching consequences outside of the school day. Many of our students are working to provide childcare or financial support to their families in the middle of this pandemic. I've often told my students this year that I understand they are surviving a pandemic and school might not be at the top of their priorities this year, and that's okay. To add this stress right before the end of their school year is to do a great disservice to them and their mental, emotional, and financial well-being. The last voice I'd like for you to hear from is a student who's both economically disadvantaged and suffers from a learning disability, who feels as though their voice is often absent from these discussions. And they say, my concern is how much they are changing the schedule. It's honestly ridiculous. This will add a whole lot more stress and confusion to the mix of schoolwork. I'm also worried about COVID. Just because the cases are going down doesn't mean it can't spring up again. Having Wednesday flexible is so much better for mental and physical health. Also, having Wednesdays the way they are means when I need help, it is more accessible. It makes me angry that people are so very willing to add more and more stress this year. This year's been traumatizing and crazy. Please just keep it how it is now. Please, that's all I ask for. We all want what's best for students. That's why we became involved with education. And it's easy to assume because of that involvement with education that we know the best course of action without consulting the constituents we're representing. But the problem is just that. We represent them, and their voices are often not heard in these discussions. Our vision statement says that every student is fully engaged in extraordinary learning experiences, preparing for successful transition to the next stage of life. Simply, we are not doing that if we disregard what they are telling us they need. To switch the schedule one more time this year flies in the face of everything we promised to do as educators and stewards of education, to do what is best for students. This year's been difficult and has illuminated a wealth of changes we could make to better ourselves as educators and the education of our students. But now is not the time to enact those changes. Thank you for your time this evening, and I hope you make the right choice and abide by the wishes of the students that you represent.
Thank you, John. And tell me it was just one, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
The rest of the public comments that were collected through the week can be viewed publicly or in the Word documents.
Perfect. Can you tell me where I know they're kind of, some are in different, right? So one is, are they all now in that public comments area or?
No, the.
'Cause I know
majority of
some
them
were
are in
broken up.
Wednesdays, the Wednesdays in May.
Okay.
Because the majority of them were on Wednesdays.
Wednesdays, perfect. Okay, that's what I thought. I just wasn't sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next is our consent agenda. I would entertain a motion. Or if someone feels something needs to be pulled, now would be the time.
Move to approve the consent agenda as is listed in the agenda in the minutes.
Perfect. It is moved by trustee Kipp to approve the consent agenda and seconded by trustee Keller. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstaining? Is it passed? Perfect. Next is our new business items, and starting A, the standards-based grading update.
Dr. Russell is here to give us just an update. This is something that we do about every other month to keep the board informed on our progress related to standards-based grading.
Chairman, citizen trustees, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak with you tonight on where the district is with standards-based grading. So I'd like to thank several of my friends that have shown up this evening. They are here as well to help answer questions, to give you a little bit more information if you so choose to have that. So we, if you go to the next slide. Yeah. Hard to believe, but it's actually been 4 years since the school board, you guys adopted the standards-based grading policy. Just a little history here. In the 18-19 year after that policy was adopted, we formed a committee of various stakeholders. I included some business folks, some administrators, some parents, some teachers, district office folks, and worked through this idea of what would that look like for us to be able to move the district towards standards-based grading. After that committee, we formed several pilot schools that began to implement this in the 1920 school year. Of course, you're aware the 1920 school year was when we had some of our technical issues, and then of course COVID towards the end of that year. It was during the past towards the spring of the 20 school year, almost right before the COVID situation hit, we sat down with every teacher that had been in those pilot schools to get their feedback. We asked them various questions about how things were going, what things did they need, what were some of the concerns. Based on hearing that primary, there were several, but really what we needed was a grade book. A grade book to be able to help communicate more clearly and be a little bit more user-friendly than PowerSchool, which is what we were using at the time. Because of that, and wisely so, we did not know a pandemic was going to hit. We chose to have a whole year where we would just stay with those pilot schools and try one more year with a new grade book. Of course, the pandemic hit and added a lot of challenges that we didn't foresee. So here we are, 21-22, getting ready to go in the new school year. Very positive and excited about where we're headed with our direction. So just to remind you, the pilot schools for in 1920 were East Valley, Lone Star, Columbia CTE, Skyview, ELA, and their art department. And the Napa High had their ELA, their art department, and their social studies department as well. Those were the whole year as well. So feedback. I mentioned that we had gotten feedback at the end of last year. This is something we also wanted to do this year. And so we were real purposeful about doing that. In our middle schools, I know our administrators had talked with their leadership teams, they got feedback. At our middle level, we have had several teachers already highly involved in standards-based grading. We have at our high schools as well. It was really at the high school where we were very purposeful about making sure that we got feedback from all groups of stakeholders. So we did some staff surveys. We had some focus groups with students and some focus groups with parents. Peter, would you did that one? So the staff surveys, as we mentioned, just sent those out to staff. I believe there was 51 respondents at Skyview, 59 at Napa High, if I remember off the top of my head. So we had a pretty good turnout on those. Those surveys, the questions were asked along those lines were, how would you like to move forward with standards-based grading? Would you like to have the whole school move forward? Would you like to see departments move forward? Or maybe a PLT in a given department move forward? And the information that was given, that was gathered, that information that was talked about was shared with the leadership team. And then I know my administrative friends here went out and spoke and had individual conversations with numerous teachers to kind of gather greater input about how to move forward with that. Then we asked the schools as well if they would be able to talk to the students. Just as Mr. Buckridge had said, it's important to get information from the students to how things are going, and they were willing to do that. I'll let them, when it's time for questions, to be able to answer how that went with their students, and parents were as well. We wanted to get input from parents about that. Peter. Just to sum up in general, the positives that we heard were teacher clarity. So this idea again about what is it that we expect students to learn? How does that tie with the objectives that we're going to teach in our courses, and how do we communicate that with our students? Was very positive. That ties really nicely into PLC work, which answers that first question. What is it we expect students to do? How do we know they're going to meet that proficiency? And of course, that helps us build tier 2 instruction or intervention off of that. And then the next one is wanting to be on the same page. One of the things that's has been interesting about it is some departments have the standards-based grading, other departments haven't. I think there was a pretty good sentiment about it's more beneficial if all of us are on the same page rather than having half and half. And oh, I'm sorry, the other part about the same page was also departments being on the same page. So you can actually meet and you can talk in general because you're looking at the same standards. So the concerns were obviously trying to build proficiency scales. This year has been a really difficult time, obviously, and there has been a whole bunch of ability to be able to look in deep into that. So that's something that we would have to definitely consider. The grade conversion alignment, I will share with you a simple applied version about that. I have it up on the board here, and I'll give you an update of what that is, but that was one of the concerns as well. And that deals with Otis and our handbook, which I'll talk about in a second. And then the next one is just more familiarity, time. Our time this year has obviously been focused around COVID, and that is something that one of the feedbacks we had. So needs there, I think in general was just gradebook conversion, which I'll mention, time to be able to work on proficiency skills, revise essential standards. I think that's been a common theme since we moved here, is to kind of examine those. And then training around assessments and communication. How does that tie into our assessments that we do, and how do we communicate how students have achieved on those assessments and achieved in those standards, or some of the other things. So next year, after all of the input was gathered, Skyview High, Napa High, West and South would like to fully implement standards-based grading. That was the decisions that they made and move forward. And we're going to share with you a little bit about some of the PDs and things that they're going to be doing. So what's next? So you'll see here, there is professional development plans that the schools have developed for the next 6 weeks, as we, actually a little bit more, 6-7 weeks as we move into school and out of school there. You'll see some general common themes around working around essential standards. You'll see some common work around proficiency scales. What does that look like? What is that? And how does that tie into assessments, as I mentioned? And providing feedback on those assessments. So there's a lot of commonalities between that. In a moment, I'll let them speak for some of the plans that they're talking about here. But what is, I think, helpful about this is it's nice, concrete, sequential, has a clear path on how to get the information that the teachers have said that they had needed. So it's helpful with that. So that's the part where I'm going to try to explain so you have clarity about what is that, how Otis is working right now. And where we have some clarity issues that we need to work on, and how we're going to try to piece that for next year. In our handbook, which I have a link for you that I'll be able to share with you in a second, we have, this is our current conversion scale. But I would call this our logic model. This was stemmed from our work with Lincolnshire High School in Illinois. And the way this is how we would convert grades in high schools based on some of the scores they have in their courses. And this is what we did our first semester off, and we will finish off the school year using this. It is likely we will not use this next year, and I'll explain why in just a second. So I have on our board here some numbers, and Trustee Westfall and Trustee Keller, I'm not sure if you're able to see it, but if you'd like to maybe come around, that would be helpful for you. Otis is our gradebook that we use in the classroom every day. And I shared up here just a very simplified version of how it works. So it works by making two calculations. And the first one is, if you'll see right here, I have a course, an ELA 9th grade course, and I got some made up standards, actually probably are real standards, real simplified. Standard 1 is just identifying the main idea of a text. Standard 2 would be making inferences off the text. Standard 3, hypothetically, would be making a prediction off of the text. And standard 4 would be supporting arguments off the text. So the way Otis is working right now is a student will have scores based on that. So you can see the student and the main idea, as they had several scores, initially a 2, 2, 3, and a 3. You can see that the knowledge is gaining here. What's key is Otis looks and does a decaying average. So it weights the last scores a little bit more heavily than the earlier scores. So you'll see here in this standard, because those scores are 3s over there, it would round up and give the student a 3. You can see the same thing here for inferencing. It'll look at the latest as a decaying average and produce a score here for that standard. Likewise here for predicting, you can see the last couple scores were 2s, when the student got a 2. Here, likewise, a 2. So the second way it calculates is that then for the overall course grade, if we were just to take all of our standards and we try to figure out what is the grade for the course, what it does is it takes all of the scores that were achieved here, it adds them up and divides them. And it comes to a decimal. And what it does is it rounds to the nearest largest number. So this student here got a 2.5, but because the computer can't have a 2.5, it has to round up to either a whole number, so it rounded up to a 3. So looking at this, the student would think, oh, well, I got a 3.0. I probably am doing well. The issue that we have though, is when we take this, so when a parent sees this in Otis, it could be a false alarm in a sense, because what we'll see is we have 2 2s here. So this student and at least half of the standards that they're learning or making progress, when you would put it through the logic model here, student actually would be a C. So what we have is a model that works well, at least showing us the progress that students are making towards standards. I can even tell you as a parent, seeing my kids on it's been really helpful because it clearly identifies what they're learning, how many tries they've done, whether they're making progress or not on that standard. So that's been really helpful. But when it converts it in the high school area, it has been tough. So one of the things that we're working with the programmers, and we were just on a call with them on Friday morning, was to move away from the logic model and to move something that Robert Marzano has talked about. Robert Marzano is a big standards-based proponent, and he's shared something along these lines where you would go off of a decimal point. And so what we're asking Otis to do next year is to basically not round for us, but to give us just this core score right here without a round. And then what we'd be able to do then is use that core score to be able to put it up towards this model more. I think it meets a couple of things nicely. One is it would always allow parents and students to be able to see where their score is, and they can calculate that. 2, one of the feedbacks we heard, it was very difficult to get a B, was one of the feedbacks that we heard from our staff. But you'll see in this area, based on the scores, we think that it would meet the needs to be able to get A's, B's, C's, and D's, and have that clarity that we have. So I share that with you because that's one of the things that we've heard from our staff about grade conversions. What we're going to do is we're going to be communicating with our parents so that they understand where this confusion could be and with some of that clarity. The reason we asked to turn on that decimal point was so that we could give some indication to parents about where students are. And that sometimes it works well, and sometimes it can give a false statement. So just try to explain that again. I would share this with you. This is a SharePoint. I'm happy to send it out to you after the meeting today, but if you haven't had a chance to look through this, this gives you a plethora of information that we've created. Talks about the PDs the district has. We've done a really nice job of breaking down how to move in standards-based grading through various sections. It talks about the teacher handbook that we have. This is about a 25-page handbook that explains it, has many frequently questions around it. It has the conversion scales in it as well. We are updating that, and then also has information that we have on our website for our parents and things. So it's a really handy tool. I think there's been a lot of good work that's been put into that. Okay, questions? I know it's a lot of information. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the update. I appreciate it. I've always been on board with the philosophy and I appreciate the piloting and the years and stepping it through and the progress that you've made of recognizing where when you get the multiple 2s and doing those standards and how many times have those kids taken those standards? Can they retake it? If they're truly learning, they're going to get those 1s and 2s at the beginning.
Sure.
Those should be able to be worked on and converted over. So the progression that I think you've made to the decimals becomes more and more true to form to where the students are. A couple questions I have are, is 3 still meeting standard and 4 still exceeding standard?
3 and 4 would be considered meeting the standard. 4 would be able to go above and beyond, so.
So if
Yes.
to get a 4, you have to exceed the standard.
Correct.
Still.
Yeah.
And so I think that's at the elementary level, it's very common to see a lot of 3s on report cards. They've met the standard, and sometimes they haven't even taught that far in the standard. So then I've had parents say, well, why is there a 2 on there? Well, we haven't even got that far in the curriculum. It's not even a reflection maybe on the child at that point. So I'm still challenged a little bit with the 4 being an exceed the standard, 3 being a meet the standard, and an A still being a 3 to a 4, especially into that high school level. That kind of means you can, in math, understand it and meet the standard. How I still struggle with, how are you ever exceeding it? You get 1 bad mark, I say 1, 2, or 2.5, that immediately drops you to the 2.99 and you're at a B for that. So I definitely feel a lot more sensitivity to the high school as this is affecting GPAs in that manner. And I still don't know that we've had a good definition on how to exceed a standard. So I'm still questioning a lot of that. I'd ask how Otis is going. I know how it's going from my standpoint, but I don't ever want to ever be a trustee and judge anything on my personal viewpoint that I have. And so I wonder maybe if it would be a pertinent time in our progression to get a survey. To get a survey of the majority of parents that are using this, or the majority of students. I appreciate the focus groups. I appreciate the intent that you went through to do that. But being that we're looking at a district-wide use, if we put out a survey to even the staff that's used it now or about to use it, and we got at least 70, 80%, but at least that majority to answer that we can see and know, how's it been using it? Do you feel confident in going forward? Has that met your expectations on that? I think the philosophy is good. I think we've struggled on our execution with multiple things throughout this year, which just causes me that same little bit of pause and concern as we go full-fledged as a district when we haven't quite gotten it quite perfect yet in our trials.
Sure. Yeah, I actually would like the high schools to kind of comment a little bit about what you talked with parents. I know that was a subject that came up a lot, so. Waylon will.
Chair Simpson, board members, thanks for allowing us to come tonight and visit with you guys and talk to you a little bit about some of the standard-based grading things that have been going on in our buildings. First, I want to highlight our pilot groups. Bless their hearts, all of them that have gone through these last 2 years and have been doing the things that they've gone through along with all the COVID pieces. So that group, just want to make sure that they get some kudos for what they've been doing and taking us through the first couple of years. To address a little bit with the parents and some of the concerns, I can echo some of the things that Greg highlighted with the students and the parents in our focus groups when we talk to them about that just that immediate feedback in their minds of knowing exactly where they are. I think that's the piece that we're going to really work on, trying to go forward with this process, is try to get more feedback in the hands of kids and parents so they can have those conversations. We heard that in our focus groups from not only the students but the parents as well, when they were looking into Otis, trying to work through Otis. One of the problems that they had is we do have traditional teachers in Otis using a different grade book within the system. That was one of the difficulties. We feel moving forward with the majority of our staff now, that will help with that communication. That'll help with that that process of parents looking at Otis and having multiple classes going through the process. So those are just some of the immediate things that I wanted to bring to your attention from that focus group. I'll let Waylon speak a little bit about some of the things that happen over at Nampa. But do you have specific questions maybe I could answer while I'm up there?
no, I think, I mean, you've really said the same thing I have, which is we haven't quite got it right yet, right? We still struggled. We haven't utilized everything properly and to the way we want to, and to the way we want to display that and have that feedback. And as I said, the philosophy is still there. We just, in my experience and what I'm still hearing from you saying we need to work on is still the same.
And we've heard that from the parents too, that once they understood the philosophy, they appreciated getting a chance to bounce some questions off us. And I think doing more of that moving forward, having more focus groups, giving parents more opportunities to come in and ask questions moving forward, I think is going to help us. And we're planning on doing that as well.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak again. Much like Mr. Barber said, we've talked a lot with our parents, talked a lot with students. And Trustee Ross, you're right that we haven't perfected where we're at yet. One thing I would suggest as part of that is we are actually changing the conversation of what grades actually mean. And when you look at the system of schooling that we've been operating in for the past 150 years, and the idea of the traditional grading system and some of the great things from that we need to find ways to retain and keep moving forward, and the reality that we are in the information age and we need to be giving feedback to kids and parents about how they interact with information, not giving them the information, because that shifted, right? So I want to frame my comments in that vein. The issue with Otis particularly is it's a brand new year, right? Anything in the best of circumstances, the first iteration, if you've ever watched Iron Man, the first iteration, he falls into a wall, falls flat on his face. It takes thousands and thousands of iterations to get better at those things. And we have the really big piece of having kids' futures in our hands while we're doing those iterations. That's hard. That's a lot of pressure there. At the same time, we are institutions of learning. And so what better way to model how to learn than to do these things with our kids, to be partnering with them as we're collaborating, going through these processes. In our focus groups with our parents specifically, we talked about Otis, and Remind came up as well, of 2 new platforms, 2 new ways of communication, how that has, for all the best intentions, all the things we needed to do, it's convoluted our ability to communicate clearly. So our number 1 goal is to fix that communication piece. At Nampa High, we talked with our focus group about what is needed. And the conversation that came out from our parents is, quite honestly, I don't need to know where my kid is at in any given moment on their grade, as long as they're progressing on their learning. This was from the parents, so I'm parroting their information. I can share that with you. What I need to know is that my kid is doing the work that the teachers need from them, so the teacher can give them the feedback that's needed. And that's a big gap that we have right now. We're talking about how do we do that? The best thing that we have in our system is East Valley, particularly, has worked that through, and our other middle schools that have been on standards-based grading, with the idea of work habits. And our intent at Nampa High is very specifically to start honing in on that and using that as the measure that biweekly is reported to parents. Your student is turning in what they need to. They are progressing in their learning where they need to. And that way we can use these factors to get to the actual model of the grade at the end. And again, I would link back to, we're changing the conversation. And I know that GPAs matter. I know that scholarships matter. And I also would suggest that looking at where colleges are going, they're mattering less. They're shifting with us. And so that's going to be that interplay as we take on the next 10 years of figuring out how to do that. Looping back to, again, what do we need to do? We need to partner with parents and understand what they are asking and what they actually need for that communication. One parent in our group, we asked, hey, be honest with us, be blunt with us, standards-based or not. And most of our parents were philosophically, we get it. One was like, I hate it, I don't get it. And so we talked about what is it that's the problem. She said, what I don't know is what my kid is expected to do. Her son happens to be a basketball player. And I said, okay, let's use the basketball model for 1 second. If I could give your kid the feedback of here's what he's doing on the court well, and here's what he's not doing. Let's say that he's great at defense, he's great at shooting the 3, but he can't make free throws. At the end of the game, I'm not going to have your kid in because he's going to get fouled and put on the line and lose the game. She's like, well, that makes total sense to me. That's what's happening. He hits the standard of hitting the 3. He hits the standard of playing defense. He can't hit the standard of making a free throw. So that conversation, and how does that lead into what an overall grade is? As a basketball player, what is he? Those are conversations that we need to start having with our parents and start putting it in ways that they can understand where we're going to help adapt that conversation and shift in what we're trying to communicate when it comes to student learning. So yes, we are not there. Yes, we have a lot of challenges. And I would I would go back to, I'm really hopeful. This is our first iteration with Otis. Last year, our problem was we had unified classroom trying to do standards and points, and it was much more on the point side that it worked. This year, we've had Otis, and we've just flip-flopped that problem. We have standards that it's meant for and points that it isn't. Next year, we hopefully have this chance to move forward with, now we're all in one standard-based grading book, and that's iteration 3.0. And we keep that conversation going. So I know I talked a lot, but I wanted to give that philosophy of where we're at, and would open myself to any other questions you guys have and any specifics I could answer for Napa High. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Was that primarily from parents? Were the comments from students similar, or what were?
For students, the great information from students, we asked virtually the same questions, and not one student in our focus group of roughly 19 kids, not one said they didn't like standard-based grading. And many of them talked to what Dr. Russell shared as well, the idea of teacher clarity. Now, let me be really clear. We're not there yet with every teacher in every class, but the kids could speak to specific experiences with their teachers of, this helped me because I knew exactly what was expected of me. I didn't have to worry about how many points I'm putting in the bucket anymore to shift the scale of a B or an A. I knew what was expected of me. Okay. The other pieces that they had on the positive side were that idea of chunking things down and breaking those standards apart and getting them into small chunks that I can understand what I need to do and the task I'm being asked to do that with. One of the things that we need to work on Napa High, we still have some folks that are assessing the standard in total, and those are the kids that said, well, that's why it's unclear to me. And sometimes when I have that teacher, there's 15 things in this one standard that are being assessed. And so we have work to do that way as well. And I would go back to as institutions of learning, that's our job. Like, we can't be thinking that we have all the answers in front of our kids. Nobody knew COVID was coming. And we showed them in a fantastic way, good and bad, of how to handle those things. And that's from, humbly, I say, the board level all the way down to our kindergarten classes. We learned through that experience. And what better way to do that than together as a community as we navigate those difficult waters. So sorry, I tend to get emotional and philosophical about that, but that's where we're at this moment in time.
Thank you, Chairman Simpson. I recognize that this is informational and discussional. I think I struggle with hearing from small focus groups when we're looking to go district-wide, and I would love to have something that went to everyone where we heard from the majority and got this out to all of our parents and staff and students.
So with that, Trustee Ross, one of the things I'm happy to do a survey. I really am. That actually came up. We talked about it.
Nice.
We thought at this point, many of the parents were surveyed to death a little bit. What I would like to do before I do the survey though, if it could be open to that idea, was I would like these guys to actually get an opportunity to communicate, educate their parents about what is standards-based grading, what's it going to look like in each of their high schools, the philosophy behind it, how that's going to go with the grade books, and then we can get some surveys out about after they're educated about that information. And actually, I'd like to do some surveys once we start school as well, just to see about how the implementation is going. We can do some for our students as well. So part of it, I think, is understanding, being educated around it. Because if you haven't had a student in some of those areas, a lot of it could be knowledge that you're not aware of. So.
Agreed, and I think you're right, and potentially it would be helpful to understand just to survey from those that have been in it this year.
Sure.
Right, you would know who your English classes and your pilots, because right, that's what pilots are for. They'll help us get information and know from those focus groups of the pilots of everybody, but get that broader sense. And so I appreciate that, and I appreciate the openness to that, and I appreciate this discussion for all those things.
Any other questions? I just want to say thank you. I know this is, it's a hard thing. Everybody wants to quantify a grade, and quantifying a grade is not really how it should be done. It's more qualitative outcome, right? Like, where are you at in this particular standard? And even as a math person, it's way easier to try to give a quantity, a number value to it, but it actually doesn't correlate. But we think we have this correlation because we've done it for so many years. So I appreciate the conversations. I heard Mr. Barber and Mr. Yarbrough both talk about conversations with parents about it's a change of how we look at this and how do we help kids to know what do they need? I know you talked about how to exceed the standard. And so I know for me, yeah, I need to know that in my day-to-day job, but as a trustee here, I don't need to know that. That's the work of the PLC teams and the PLT teams to decide how are they going to know if someone's meeting those expectations. And I saw, Dr. Russell, from your presentation that was part of it, time to be working on those things. So I just want to thank you guys, continued work, and yeah, realize this is a work in progress, but I think it's a valid work that we are in progress of. Anything else? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We've invited Mr. Miller back, and more importantly, two of his students to talk about the Georgia Triangle issue or concern, plan, dream. The information has not changed. It's the same information for you to review, but tonight we just wanted to share a student perspective and what this could mean. So, Mr. Miller, would you like to introduce your students?
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from them.
Chairman Simpson, trustees, thanks for the opportunity. I thought the last meeting we had informal, but very productive. So I thought it might be helpful to invite a couple students. I've got one student that was a former student who actually has his own business now, and then a current student, just to get a little of both perspectives. So we'll start with the current student. Clay Franson, he's a senior at Skyview this year, and in my program, so I'll just let him talk and then.
Hello, and thank you for letting me speak tonight. So Dylan told me to tell you guys a little bit about the class and how it's changed over the last couple of years. I've been in for 3 years now. And the last 2 years, we haven't been able to build a house, which is kind of our biggest concern at the moment. We've done more in-school projects, like we just remodeled the culinary room and stuff along those lines. Just smaller projects, but some days in class, we're not as busy as we should be. He teaches on the board some days, but no, some days we don't have hands-on work, what we should be doing. But do you guys have any questions about how class works or anything along those lines?
Love the idea that, all we're going to say is just love the idea that Mr. Miller presented, that you guys would have a significant hands-on project.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it would be a benefit to the community. So that's awesome, Clay. Yeah, thank you.
Clay, thanks for coming tonight. And my question was, in looking forward to next year, if we were able to make this dream come true, compare that to what you're doing now. So if you were really working on a building,
Yeah.
What do you think and how would that benefit you?
Well, it's more the consistency of having work consistently. I think with us, we have one job at a time, and you're waiting on people constantly. So like we're kind of slow sometimes, and sometimes we have work, but like with the house, we go through first step to the last step, everything, and I just think it'd be overall more beneficial for the students.
Clay, did you have opportunity to work as a freshman on a house?
I did not. No, I was in the class till my sophomore year.
Okay.
Yep.
So you haven't had the chance to do something like that quite yet, but I can see the benefit of it. Very cool. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Clay.
Yeah, thank you.
This is Angel Ramirez.
I was in Mr. Miller's class my freshman year all the way to my senior year. I really liked this class. I learned a lot there. More importantly, that's what I do right now. I make houses. I do huge buildings for ESI, other subcontractors. I've done a lot of big multifamilies. Last couple of years ago, I did one building with 120,000 square feet. It was in downtown Boise. I really like doing those. Right now, what I see that we need is just more people in construction. More and more labor is getting lower and lower and lower, and I can't find any people to help me. And Miller's been helping me get people to help me over here at work. But if you don't have his class, it's going to be harder for more students to get into it. Lately, I'm having three of my cousins actually are in Miller's class. One's name is Alejandro, Michael, Antoine, and they really like construction class. They really enjoy it, and all they want to do is when they get out of high school, start their business like I do, and just really like doing that kind of work. I graduated from Skyview, and I went to all 3 schools. I went to Columbia, Nampa High, and just a great experience in this class. I really liked it.
Thank you.
Thanks for questions.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
So Mr. Juris has written you a memo. We would like the board to approve this project. And one of the things that he specifically asked the board to consider in the last paragraph, so we talked about how after it's built, how we have to legally dispose of it because it actually is district property. But we would like to begin to take the proceeds from the sale of this house, whether it's a duplex or triplex or single family, and we'd like to put it back into an account that is accessible by our CTE team here so that they would then have money to purchase additional lots and move forward. So really the district is loaning a little bit up front for a very worthwhile investment.
Excellent. I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the Georgia Triangle project.
I'll second. Excellent. So it was moved by trustee Keller, seconded by trustee Ross. Any discussion? Want to speak to your motion?
Oh, I just think this is a really exciting project. I think it's great for the students, for hands-on education. I think it's been well thought out. I think this is a great use of land that is not currently being used. And I like the way that we can take the money and continue to put it in the program to ensure that the program can continue. So very well done. I think it's very exciting.
Excellent.
And is it true that some of the district team has talked about a possibility of the dream I mentioned? I understand it's not only my dream.
So we have, so probably not excited to become landlord because all of the fun that goes with it, but certainly when we started looking at this, we looked at it, how it might serve our McKinney-Vento team or families in need. It's likely in order to get this going that we would sell so that these guys could do that, but it has been part of the discussion,
Sure.
Not currently the plan.
Yeah. It's fun to dream.
Excellent. Any other questions, discussion, comments?
Maybe
None?
Angel could help us build 180.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes.
But he needs the workers.
You love it.
Love it.
Excellent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstain? Excellent. It's approved unanimously.
The next potential action item is really about what we would say Wednesdays in May, because of the time and transition it would take us to move nutrition services and busing back. So we're really talking about 4 Wednesdays in May. We told the board as we brought back our secondary that we would review this at this meeting. You have, I think, seen all of the responses. In Friday letter, we asked both staff and parents to share any comments that they had with that, and you've seen the response to that. The ones that we have reviewed, again, we have the gamut. Bring them back 5 days a week. Please don't bring them back in, all of those choices. The preponderance has asked us, much like Mr. Bruckridge reported, that this would be another change. Probably the value of it doesn't outweigh what we would get in return. So there, the administration would recommend that you would consider keeping us with Wednesday as e-learning days.
I would entertain a motion or discussion.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move to keep Wednesdays for the rest of the remainder of the current school year as an e-learning day, intervention day.
A second.
Okay, so it's been moved by trustee Kit and seconded by trustee Keller to keep Wednesdays as an e-learning day through the remainder of this school year. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure, I think what I've heard tonight just echoes some of the things that I've read through the emails that I've received. I think it was about 7-1. Numbers aren't everything, but they're something. It was about 7-1 asking for Wednesdays to remain an e-learning day, an intervention day. Many parents, students, teachers said that it's invaluable. And honestly, what I saw in Columbia, what was happening on Wednesdays for those students and for that kind of intervention was significant. Kids that, because of the year that we've had, have gotten behind. It's a real focused day to help them to regain some learning. So I think it's great. I think another change is not helpful. I think it could lead to kind of the law of diminishing returns, where more is expected, but you actually ended up less, more fatigue, and all for students, faculty, and parents. So I'm in favor of keeping Wednesdays as it is.
Any other discussion, comments?
Chairman Simpson, I wondered if maybe it wouldn't be pertinent for this board to be updating our plan. And so we've been making a lot of conversations about our plan as far as like last month at a regular meeting, we updated our quarantine. And as I was reflecting on what we do here as a board is we were creating this reopening policy. And so truly I was wondering if we wanted to actually make a motion to update the policy per what we've been talking about. And plus then it says in here that we will movement between the categories be done by this board and this body. And as I look at category 1's definition says that we would be at least face-to-face 4 days a week. And that way it kind of goes back to what you talked about and heard at your national board convention, right? Which was, we're kind of policy. We're this plan. We're saying you're in this category. And this is what we're expecting as a board in that category. And then from there, procedurally, as far as schedules, and as I was kind of reading all the comments that we heard by all our patrons, it felt very procedural in a lot of things that were upsetting to them, be them, what was happening with behavior or schedules or special needs and kind of where everybody sat with that. And I was trying to kind of wrap my head around our duties as a trustee and where we would be, and we did. And I appreciate this coming back on that conversation that said, I think the conversation actually was if we, as Southwest District Health, turn to green. Now they've changed all that when you go online. There are all of these different shades of blue, completely changed. So trying to disregard that and say, I think we're going to struggle now to continue to align our red, orange, yellow, green with Southwest District Health anymore. But nonetheless, I felt that we really could, if we wanted to move, that we say that the Nampa School District is in category 1, it aligns with everything we're doing in current practice. And that was kind of my thought, which doesn't totally speak to this motion, but does in a way of our duty. So I'm gonna throw that out as my discussion.
So can I just make sure I heard you correctly in that instead of a motion on like whether what happens on Wednesday or not, you're saying we address the opening plan
And I'm happy to.
and look at just saying this is where we are and here's based on where we are, these are the things that can or can't happen and what's happening. Is that?
It is.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I do feel like that we talked about addressing this specifically.
We did, if we went green.
Yeah. So that's the only reason where I'm a little hesitant and I know I feel like that's why it's on the agenda. That's why we're getting the feedback was that what previously we had discussed, like, yeah, if we hit this category, what's that going to look like? And let's give it some time after we get back into the 4 days and see where numbers are and what's happening, and let's readdress it. So, I mean, here nor there, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you, yes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak. I think trustee Warost is right, is that we actually have a plan. I think this motion is already outlined in the plan and allows us to do that. I actually think tonight you don't have to have a motion at all because we currently are in up to 4 days a week or no less than that. We currently, and the documents are in your board doc, our average daily per 10,000 is still over 1, which actually still puts us in the previous yellow. So even though Southwest isn't doing yellow and red, etc., our benchmarks, our metrics identify that. We're so very close. It's below 1 in order to move us completely to the green. So I do think our plan already outlines the process and the transition pretty clearly, as trustee Ross has said. But I do think because we've made these decisions as a board, that it's really appropriate tonight for you to decide what you would like to do with the Wednesdays moving forward tonight. But I think it's already outlined in the plan as well.
Any other thoughts? Discussion, questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Any abstain? Okay, so it's approved 3-2. Right, did I get that right?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
okay.
The next item is a resolution that we'd like the board to consider. In our work session, we reminded you that we are seeking a bid that does need to be approved by the board, but this bid really only has one.
So I think we're on D.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Supplemental.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Information on supplemental, the same information is in there. Tonight, we'd really love for the board to address 2 questions, whether or not we would consider moving forward with the supplemental and what date. There were only 2 questions that came in from trustees since the last one. One of them was the complete documentation for the HVAC, and we provided that to you all. And the second question was, what was the recommendation of the administration related to a supplemental levy? And our recommendation, after spending a lot of time talking and thinking about it, is to go ahead and plan to run a supplemental levy in March of next year. I would also say a significantly reduced supplemental levy. And the reason for March is that we do have 3 trustees that are up for re-election. And so in January, the new board or the same board would be able to either reaffirm or to move a different direction, since they would be the ones who are working through that. In addition, it gives us a little bit of time to work through ESSER and what it can pay for and what it can't pay for, get in rhythm with the state as we say, hey, we think this is applicable, state approves it or state doesn't approve it, so that we have a better understanding which of those items we could really move off because our ESSER funds would do that. So in response to the trustee who asked that, that would be our recommendation.
Chair Simpson, I move that we take no action on this item tonight. If I even need to make a motion for that, your recommendation.
I mean, you can, is that okay? We have a second. I'll second. Okay, you want to speak to your motion?
I think exactly what the superintendent said. If their recommendation is in March and with elections coming up in November, that we would table this discussion till later on down the road for those folks to do that.
To speak as a person who entered school board with the levy discussion in full swing, it's very overwhelming, and especially if there was, I mean, God forbid to think there would be 2, possibly 3, you know, if there were people that hadn't been involved in the levy discussion. I think it'd be really challenging to know what to do and how to act. it'd be my view, I didn't know what we were going to be asked to do tonight with the levy. I think we need to agree to run a levy because there's sufficient things that are not covered that we know that legally can't be paid for with ESSER funds that are a part of the district's ongoing needs. And so when I came into the room, I thought we need to do a levy. And we need to, this board, knowing from where we've come and where we need to go, I really believe we have a responsibility to set the trajectory of having a levy, the amount and the timing of it. I think that the new board can figure out, should it be a different board than this, can make some adjustments. But I think they're going to need the money to do the business of the district. As it's been done to be good stewards. So I think it'd be a mistake to not say yes to a levy. The timing, the amount is I'm not sure, but I think we need to do one.
Can you clarify for me the timeline? I think you had said that we don't have the election timeline for what it would be in March.
We don't have the exact date in March. Those are set at the beginning of January. We can guess on a pattern. But they generally set the calendar and then we see the whole election calendar.
And I thought I read that it was, well, like at one point it was 60 days, the language has to be ready. But then I thought I saw like later it said 50 days. So that kind of confused me just a little bit.
So May or November is 60 days. Any other election is 50 days.
Oh. So if it was in March, it would be early January is when language would need to be ready to go.
It's likely that we would talk with the board about here's how we reduced it, here would be, and give you the suggestions, and the board here could say, hey, let's move this off or forego this because we don't need it anymore, or let's plan on using ESSER. So we would have to do some work leading up to that so that we were prepared to do all that we needed to do.
Yeah.
To move in March.
I think, I mean, I don't have a problem with necessarily making a decision tonight or not, but I do think that it is extremely important that we do groundwork going into January. And it's one of those things where I feel like even going into November elections, possibly with possible new trustees, that we are making sure that we're communicating and hearing from our community on this specific piece leading into it, because that's a quick turnaround if someone's newly elected in January, right? And then we're going to make this decision. So I feel like it's going to take some serious, I mean, just planning and communication on our part as a board and looking at those things and what is needed.
And just education,
Right.
Should there be new board members who haven't been through this, haven't been more board members before, like was the case for me, it's drinking from a fire hose, that, these levy rates, bond rates, all of that. And what it seems to me, so for me, my view is, right now we have $25+ million over, 12.8, each year. But to move that, even to possibly move that to 6, to cut it, in half is a significant reduction. I'm just pulling that number out because of the combination of ESSER monies that we could use from earlier slides, probably in our presentation here. So in my view, I'm not sure how that money, where that's going to come from, unless we levy. Those are essential things that I think, and they were the supplemental things. They were things like transportation, playgrounds, building upgrades. I'm doing this from memory, so forgive me, but those kind of things that truly are that fit supplemental. And with the reduction of the actual staffing salaries and that plan over however many years it was, 6, 8 years, I think I like the way that's headed. I think that's a good direction. So I would not want us to leave this for the board as it's composed in January. That's frightening to me. It'd be like not planning your family's budget until, you know, it's past due is the way I would feel about that.
So I guess that's part of my question in your motion. Is it like, we're gonna table this and not talk about it till January? I guess I just want more of a feel for your thoughts on that before I make a decision.
No, thank you. And I'll clarify and speak to my motion. And I think some of it then goes around, you know, we've talked about kind of what is that number? And then we've talked about what are our hopes and dreams for the district? We've talked about additional ESSER monies that are coming in, and I kind of expressed the conversation about doing something big, having something that we never get the opportunity to do because we never have the funds for. But then there's that same conversation that says it's never a good idea to do something that you can't replicate and continue because these are one-time funds. I think we're hearing a lot about the counselors, and I brought up the counselors before. I think through all of this, I truly believe that what is it? The first week of May is teacher appreciation. I think we need a counselor appreciation as well to double dip onto that for everything these guys have been through. Like I said, years ago, it was told to me that an average counselor should be 100, 200 kids per counselor. And our district has 600. And then you add everything that we've added to the plates just socially. I look at things like the supplemental levies so a 40 million levy that Coeur d'Alene did specifically with a purpose of a big plan that said, we're gonna do this for suicide prevention. Was it Cassia County that just recently passed another one with a purpose that said, we're gonna do this for the behavior, social, emotional counselors. I don't know what that, we haven't defined that program. It hasn't come from us from the district or from trustees. And that's why I say then, and we're rolling over trustees. We don't know what that is right now. And so I would love to either have something like that said, we're going to use ESSER funds one time to get this started. Then we're going to go ask the public for supplemental levy to keep that going. Otherwise, the way it sits right now, I'm struggling with because we talked about taking salaries off, and really what was truly left was about $1 million. And it is awkward, right, to go to the public for $1 million when we're getting 47 million in federal. You can't just fold that million in. Yeah, we could. Then there's a conversation of facilities and closing that. We are getting a lot from ESSER. I struggled tonight with our consent agenda about pulling off HVAC and having a conversation about how much more money we're paying to federal because we put the federal dollars to use on the HVAC, and was that the proper use of funds? I paused and didn't find my words fast enough. At the end of the day, we weren't that much over budget of what the district budgeted that came out of supplemental levy. So that's where I'm trying to find our middle ground of what we're going to people and what we're asking for and what we're doing with it, which I think we are great as a district about. So I think maybe then we say table it until we find a purpose for the money instead of just asking for money to ask for it.
So I'm just pulling up the slide here of the potential scenarios, and the money that is essential or money that we've counted on minus the salaries is still over $4 million or somewhere around $4 million. So that's money that cannot be just absorbed. It's not ESSER qualifying money, and it would be using other monies because that tag that came out, a potential levy would be 6.165. So those are things I love the concept of the big idea and supporting that. I think that's great, whether it's councils or something else. But without this money, as I understand this, without this levy money, we will lose things. We'll be back to pay to play, things like that. I don't think we want to go back there. I don't think we need to go back there. But by our current numbers, it's going to require a supplemental levy at some point in the very near future when our current one runs out. That's why I think setting that trajectory and saying we need to do, I mean, here's let's do a bare minimum levy, but let's set a levy for March or for whenever. I'm not set on a particular number, but I'm persuaded that we should ask our constituents our patrons for enough to do things like transportation, activities, our NPL, our curriculum, et cetera, that is on this potential scenario slide. I don't think we can leave it to a new board. I think that would be, I'll just speak it would be distressing to me to walk in and say, hey, you got a month to decide. You need to bone up on levies and what they all mean, and you need to set one for March. That would be overwhelming. I think with this board's experience, we set that trajectory. We help the next board out in having those things set. So I would speak against the motion to do nothing.
Well, and what I'm hearing, Kim, when you talk about things, I feel like there are things that our district leadership used, like the ESSER 1 funds to have help brought into each building for kids and for staff for social, emotional, right, and mental health in buildings this year. So, I mean, I think the things that some of those other districts are doing, I feel like we didn't levy for. Our district used those ESSER funds already as part of it. I mean, and even the SEL curriculum, like I feel like we were ahead, our leadership had us ahead of the game because we were talking about that before COVID even hit. And COVID just put a huge magnifying glass on, right? Like this is an issue and we do need to be addressing it so kids can learn. And so I have no problem with the goal. I just think some of those things have already been woven in, and those ESSER funds that we have been receiving have been going to those things. And I'm interested to know, like the ESSER 3, what the use, because you're right, it could come down to January and us saying, we don't have a need, this need that we had is maybe gone because of ESSER 3 funds, and whether it's because we have, discretionary funds that are now available because we've used ESSER 3 funds to pay for these other things, that happens. I'm good with having like, here's the big ticket thing, the big goal, the pie in the sky, like, how do we make this happen? Yeah, and I just know it takes planning. I think we saw with this last levy, right? I mean, if there's not a ton of communication and discussion, I just worry about tabling and then you're right, like the other things that we do have to take care of piling on and this being pushed down, where I really feel like this needs to be a continued conversation moving forward. Like, what are we going to do with this? Do we need to have this? And yeah, what are those, if we do, what are those monies going to go to? Whether it be goals and things like that. But I don't think we have to set that goal tonight. I just worry, I mean, I would even like not have a vote to table and not have a vote and just have us say, we want to keep revisiting this. We want to do some communication. We want to talk to folks. We want to see, right? Like, are there some big goals and things that our community is like, why aren't you looking at trying to do this? I don't know, right?
I guess my question would be, I don't feel like trustee Ross is saying we don't want to move forward and have a levy. I think you want to have a levy. You're just saying if this is going to be 11 months from now, do we need to hit the pavement today? You know, so maybe I'm misunderstanding.
No, tonight, I didn't feel that even right now today,
We're not ready.
I'm not ready for what I know what it is, or for what I know it is. I wouldn't know how to put a dollar amount number to a levy.
Right.
When all I know, based upon the current information is that it's the yellow column. Is the 1.285 million cannot be spent by any ESSER funds.
I'm not sure we're looking at the same thing.
On the supplemental levy comparison March slide. That's the number in need as I know it this evening. Yeah.
It's so it's just two different displays of it. But in the one you're looking at, Mike, the potential scenarios, it's that second to the last column on the right that says things ESSER can't be used for.
Yes.
That's the column she's talking about.
So I would,
The 1.285.
currently that's our need is 1.2. And so that's the only number I know we would need right now that I would struggle to put that out and ask for at this moment. And so that is.
Yours is more of a let's just wait.
I just don't have anything else.
Let's just wait for now. And would you like to?
Not tonight
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify here. That's assuming that we take the 3.9 million, which currently is on there in salaries, and move it completely to ESSER. So that's a commitment that the district has. We believe at this point with our understanding, we can justify that. So I just want to make sure that we're talking in the same area.
We are.
And which is why we offered another example. And it can be there, it can be higher, it can be lower, it can be in between. But with each of those numbers, then you're saying with this ESSER money, we're going to commit this amount of money that now doesn't go to extra opportunities for kids or those type of things. It goes to cover this ongoing expense.
And may I say something?
Yes.
So, and if we were to take those salaries off and not have a levy, that limits the amount of money for some big idea, I think, because we are committing to ongoing salaries, one-time money. That doesn't seem wise. I'm okay if we wait. I'm not okay to push this, because what I've heard in this conversation several times is that the new board should make that decision. That's what much too far. You know, I feel like we need to make those decisions, set the trajectory, come up with, are we going to do a levy? Yes or no? And when is the date? And we can move toward the amount in time. And if tonight's not the night to make the decision of if we're going to do one, but I would hope that we could make that decision in the coming months with this body. That would seem to be very important.
Yeah. And my understanding leaving the work session earlier this month was not that we set a dollar amount today. We just say yes or no to running one. And then when November, August, March, May, what are we thinking as far as that's concerned? And not, that was my understanding, like coming into here, are we ready to make the decision on those two things? But if we're not.
The urgency goes away if you're not choosing this August or this November.
Right.
If that's where you might be leaning to, then the urgency increases because we need to move forward with some information.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to call. Yep. I'm going to remind people. So we have a motion by trustee Ross, seconded by trustee Keller to table currently this supplemental levy action of talking about yes, no, and a date. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Any abstaining?
No, I'll vote aye.
Aye. So we have 2 ayes, I believe, 3 nays. So that motion fails.
Madam Chair for motion.
I move we hold a supplemental levy election in March 2021 or 22. Perfect.
I wish it was already done.
The legislature will still be in session.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Perfect. So it's moved by trustee Westfall, seconded by trustee Kip. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay, just on the grounds, I don't know what it is.
Okay. And any abstaining? So I believe that was 4 ayes and 1 nay. Excellent. Thank you. Now the sole
All right,
source
now.
resolution.
And our attorneys have written this resolution because there is no other vendor who could provide these services and align with the current infrastructure in the district. So Mr. Jers has worked with Hamilton, Michelson, and Hilty, and he would ask the board tonight to approve this resolution.
I would entertain a motion. Oh, go ahead.
I have one quick question. I apologize that I did not recall. Was there a timeline of services that we are using these folks for? It is, sorry.
Yeah, ask the question again. I want to make sure I answer the right thing.
Currently, this is the only vendor with that can provide us services for what we currently have right now. And so when we do this, we're saying, yep, we're good, recognizing right legally that you're the only one. And I didn't note any timeframes either for this action item or for the contract in which you want to use this vendor for. How long? Is there a time frame for that we will be using them as the sole provider?
So the answer to that is a good example is the bids that will move forward for the new systems include them installing their system. So as we continue to do this, this is a one-time thing to get us the initial software in there. So we wouldn't have to necessarily go through the sole source for that chunk anymore. Now, if we wanted an additional service or additional thing, we might have to do this again. So I think that answers your question.
So I think there's just one thing that this is tied to.
Yes,
One,
it is the data analytics software.
Yeah.
And so to clarify that, are they providing consistent monitoring? Because this is the monitoring system of the HVAC. So is this an annual prescription that they're the monitor interface?
It would be district staff doing the monitoring on that.
Okay.
And doing that. Now, they would be the back end support to help us make sure we know how to operate the software correctly.
So it's a one-time install.
And it's a one-time install, and we would then move forward and be responsible for maintaining it ourselves.
So the software.
So then it sounds like it's not a continuing contract. It's a one-time for a one-time install.
It is, there would be a small maintenance, like software, you buy software front and then there's maintenance. So you get the current updates and that stuff that goes with it. So there's the typical that goes along with that is 20%. Everything you do is you pay the upfront and then maintenance to get all the updates and security patches and all the stuff that goes along with it is 20% the years after that.
And are we going to contract for a certain number of years after that for the maintenance package?
We are not obligating the district to any long-term stuff. So if we wanted to stop paying for that, we can.
We can, even with, thank you. That was a very long response to that. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the sole source resolution.
I'll second.
So that was moved by trustee Kip, seconded by trustee Ross. Seeing no other discussion or questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstaining? Excellent. That is approved unanimously.
All right, so you have a monthly budget status report. You'll notice that we have finished third quarter and then have moved on. Randy is here to just run you through 4 simple accounts. So Peter, if you could, yes, that one right there. And the first fund, just to bring your attention to, is Fund 246, our safe and drug-free schools. Wrong document, sorry.
Okay. Let me try the other one.
Sorry. And Fund 246.
And that's gonna be a bunch of pages down.
No, not too far.
It's not too bad.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
244 or 243.
Two more. One more.
Page
Right
7.
there, right there. Yep. This is basically the tobacco settlement money from the state, and we can use it for about half of our SRO contract.
And so you can see that it's substantially depleted because that does take the majority of these funds. We leave just a little bit in there for some other related ones. Fund 252.
This fund is our ESSER 1 funds and should be depleted at the end of this year.
But we just wanted to bring your attention where you can follow these expenditures. We'll bring you other updates and reports, but you can look to see how it's coming in and where it's going out. There will be a different fund number associated with ESSER 2 and a different one associated with ESSER 3. Fund 255 is our neglected and delinquent monies.
This money is solely for summer school at for gateways.
And it could be used for lots of other things, but because these children qualify under these, this is how we do use it. And you'll notice that that was spent this last summer and is gone. And then finally, Fund 273.
273 was our new distance learning money that we got some federal grants for, and it was promptly spent.
So again, just wanted to keep bringing to your attention so that these reports become familiar to you. And if we need to adjust them because you're not finding them useful, we'd love to be able to do that. But again, another piece of federal money that has come in that was very specific in its use. We had to create an account so that you could see it come in and then go out, and it is spent.
That was the infamous Kati hotspots. The 380,000 last year.
Yeah. And I don't know whether if you have questions on any of the other funds that Mr. Dewey can answer for you.
Anybody have any other questions?
No, this is helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Appointment of a negotiation team member.
So I just wanted this board to take the opportunity, if someone would like to appoint a board member to the negotiations team. I know I have currently been doing that. I'm not going to assume you want me to continue. I am happy to continue if this board so chooses, but I wanted us to have the discussion and then also agree to what moving forward, what this would look like.
I'd love to have you continue if you're so willing.
Well, I move to appoint. It's been moved by Trustee Killer and seconded by Trustee Kip without a skip of a beat. I'm happy, but I'm also happy if someone else or you guys would like someone else.
Thank you. This appointment is probably the most time consuming of even just our regular meetings. And so I think I really just want to say thank you for your willingness to serve on that. And I think we all clearly recognize how much work that is and
the good work you do.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And I think, if so many things weren't in limbo, for me, I would potentially consider helping out with that, but that's not the case. And for right now, I think that's a good appointment for that. And I support it fully.
Yeah. And Madam Chair, I just appreciate the unique perspective you bring to that as a teacher and as a board member. I think it's extremely helpful. I see it that way. And I want to echo Trustee Ross of just thank you for the time you've invested. I know this has been such an unusual year, and that was a significant burden, both for you and for Dr. Russell, just the time involved. I can't imagine the fun you've had.
I will say, I actually really enjoy it. Like I learn tons, but it's also one way where I get to really interact closely with the employees of this district. and have good collaboration and dialogue and discussion, and it's not always easy, as you know, but and it's not the fastest thing ever, but I think it's a meaningful process, and so I appreciate and I'm humbled and honored to serve for you guys on this committee. Thank you for this appointment.
So when we vote to appoint you, does that
Yes.
keep the team the same as we've been appointed in the past to represent the board?
I believe there is a change, actually, sorry. And just one,
I
right?
think we are supposed, you're right, trustee.
I think we haven't yet started.
Yeah, we haven't started
We're both
yet, but
waiting
yeah.
for both teams to consolidate and make sure that we're there. So we'll make sure that we get that on the docket for you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that because, they're representing us. We, bless them as it were to go forward and speak for the board. And so it's important, I think, that we do that. And you've done a really good job, Mandy. So I'm glad you're willing to continue.
Okay, that being said, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, all those opposed say nay. And I will abstain.
Would you teach us sometime about the process that we've been moving to? I know we can't all come to the really long training, but if you could give us, trustee, high level.
Yes,
Notes.
I will make a note. I feel like that could be
Thank you.
a summer something. Yeah. Perfect. Policy review.
Policy review. So the first policy is actually ready for a second read, 5235. We tried to represent the ideas. One was, can you define contagious disease? Our nursing staff probably wasn't as comfortable with this, but this happens to be, it's cited by Merriam-Webster. We thought about using the CDC, but the CDC was a lot more complicated and not easy to incorporate into an easy paragraph. And then the other need that we think we have captured, if the district does request an examination, we would say, and here's the level of cost that we're talking about, and here are other parameters that the district would get to say needs to happen here. So you didn't get to travel to New York to find a specialist or something like that, that there would be other parameters. So this was our best attempt at representing the ideas that we heard.
Madam Chair, move to approve policy 5235 for a second read.
One second.
So it's moved by trustee Kipp and seconded by trustee Ross. Any questions, comments?
I have a quick clarification question. Thank you for that definition and understanding of that. And I think that really helps tie in because you see the word influenza up there, right? Which is super common. Can you remind me about staff? Do we have sick days? Do we have personal leave days? And then when we put in here that the district then pays for that, but then you added that last line, which of the procedure of what that is. Someone tries to come to work with just a flu, that would fall under this policy. We're like, you're way too sick, you should go home for the day. Do we then ask that teacher to use one of their days? And that doesn't necessarily mean that in this policy, the district is paying for that additional. Thank you for that clarification.
The other thing that we tried to do is we tried to go back to Idaho code, which the word contagious disease emerges from the section of Idaho code. We couldn't find Idaho code defining what it meant either. So that was our third choice for definition.
And if I may, was it January when the legislature came back together for the special session and they were talking, I forgot which bill came up at the time, but one of them had to do, and I can go back and maybe help it. They weren't using this same verbiage of contagious disease for the same reasons of a definition. They used some different words. And I remember having a conversation with one of the senators about the reason they changed their word choice so that they could define it more for the same troubles that you're experiencing. So if you want, I can help find that or divert you to that January special session that they sat in to talk about. I don't know if that was the emergency closure one or what was happening in that one, but it very much talked about when the state declares a state of emergency for a pandemic, but instead of pandemic, they started using different words, word choices for that same reason. I can empathize with where you are based upon that, and that was the reason for getting that definition in there, and I appreciate you putting that procedural part, explaining what the district does and doesn't pay for, so thank you.
Other questions or discussions? Excellent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstain? It's approved unanimously.
Okay, the next section, so thank you. The Board of Trustees approved a whole section for review of the 1000 series. Those included ones that had no comments or were really grammatical in nature, and so those were all approved. This before you tonight are ones that you had a conversation about, and we attempted to represent those ideas. A lot of them are still pretty minor changes, but we think we might have caught it, and you could probably take these individually or all together. Certainly would like to hear whether or not we represented the ideas that emerged from the conversation during the work session.
Yeah, and I don't know the fastest, but what I was kind of thinking is if we could if there were any of these that you feel like, yep, that's exactly what we talked about in the work session, we feel like there doesn't need to be any other change to this necessarily, that we can approve that. And then if there are some that we could individually address those, that if somebody said, nope, I think we need to look at this as well. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I felt like they hit all the edits spot on for our conversation.
Too.
Yeah.
The only question I had was on the purpose mission, is that without a date, we don't hold ourselves accountable, because we struck out February.
Just annually.
In October, just annually, and having a date in there didn't make us do it, and it didn't get calendared.
Right.
Maybe now that we've talked about it, and we can have our clerk calendar it for us, so we do review it when we say.
I wonder if we continue, well, we'll continue with the work session first, that'd be an interesting thing to do in February, you know. Is that what we struck from it, February?
Yeah.
But it would be interesting in that work session in February, right after the, that organizing meeting, to then look at that. That could be a good timing for it. I know that's another edit, but.
We have a lot of policies that we have to review annually. Do those policies set, they have to be done by a date, or do they also just say annually?
Most of the ones that we're talking about, which come out of rule,
yes,
we bring to you in September at the beginning of the year. It doesn't direct us to do it in September. We just do it because it's.
Those policies just say annually, or it's Idaho code rule that it's done annually.
We could certainly include, well, this is a little bit different in that you're actually revising purpose. It's not just a policy that you're looking at, you're looking at something broader.
I don't think we're compelled to revise, though. We just have to review.
Correct.
Yeah, was the change, right? Yeah.
February seems like a reasonable, the board elections will have occurred, we trustees would have been in, and I don't know. We had it there before, we just didn't do it.
I think that too, the dauntingness of it was that it kind of was more review, revise, and approve all by February. So it seems like a really quick thing to do, but where it is review and revise is necessary, to me, that says the process could start in February. It doesn't have to be completed by February. I don't know, does that make sense? So if there were changes, if there was revision, I just worry that by February is not enough time.
So the review will be in February, and then
It could be ongoing work.
Yeah.
Throughout the
Follow
year.
after that.
That's
Is
good.
there maybe, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
Like maybe,
So I heard reinstate by February.
yeah, just the review part.
yeah.
Just that it happens in
So
February.
review by February and revise as necessary.
Yeah.
Correct?
I might rebuff that, and it just paints us back into a corner of a specific date, and going back to trustee Kip's statement of, you started in January, you're drinking from a fire hose, and then suddenly within 30 days, you've got to know how you think you're going to revise a mission and vision statement. I'm almost still more comfortable with annual and grouping that into the ones in September and October, knowing that that has to happen, that we've got a nice new system that's going to be robust and keep going for years and years.
Right.
Of reviewing annually
Yeah.
and lumping this in with those annual, because I couldn't even tell you right now which ones of those policies. We rely on our board clerk to do that, and so I'm kind of comfortable with the annual and not painting us back into that corner of a specific
So
February
there
date.
is a corner though, it's September. With the annual review of other
I don't
policies.
even know that I put that.
True. Yeah.
I mean, know it's there,
Right.
but not put it
Yeah.
in policy, I guess, of that date is what I'm.
So maybe what I'm hearing is that maybe if I go through and look at any others that have to be reviewed annually and
Yeah.
Dr. Keller, maybe you and I could sit down and look at them and kind of just make sure that we have a list of, these are the ones that for sure need to be reviewed, where the rest don't need to be reviewed annually. We just want them on a rotation,
Yeah.
right?
And you could put here to be reviewed annually with other required policies or something, so that it holds you accountable.
Yeah. to
But
a
let's say it
timeline.
was done in August instead of September. Or
Yeah. Okay.
I think those are two totally great points. Both are valid, so I don't know that,
Yeah.
we have to 100% go with either.
Right.
Although it'd really help us for the.
To know.
Yes, I'm like, I'm looking for
go.
we do have a motion on the
I
table, if
I-
you want to amend that or not.
Well, no, because it's just for first read, remember?
Oh,
So we're
okay.
just accepting for first read and then giving some feedback is what we're doing here. So I do kind of like that with, now I lost it, with other
Required
policies, kind of that little
Oh.
language in there. Yeah.
Yeah. It got lost when you had a specific, so maybe it won't get lost with a vague. We have this policy with the intention to do these things, so let's do them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Any others?
Any others of those? Okay, I would entertain a motion then.
Move to approve policies 1005, 1110, 1140, 1200, 1405 for first read.
A second.
Perfect. So it was moved by trustee Kip and seconded by trustee Ross. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstain? It's approved unanimously for first read.
And the next line was just to listen to hear what you want to do with those other policies. So there were a set of policies that we haven't yet adopted, haven't had a chance to review, or it could be that a board previously reviewed them and chose not to implement them as policy. So the ones specifically that we're talking about are 1510, 1620, 1630, 1640, 1645, and 1650. And we actually included anything that anybody said something about. We're wondering that, so we're thinking ahead. So when we do this with the 2000 series, when we do this with the 4000 series, do we want to, if 3 trustees want to explore it, we automatically send it to a committee and they review it. Does it take 2 trustees? I don't know what you want to do. So I guess we need to listen about what went well in this process, what we need to change, and then what do we do with that set of policies that are new and we didn't know what to do with as we were prepping.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So the policies that
you're talking about are those that last part of that last group. It's like the last half of that last group. Is that, am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. I liked this process. So what went well? I liked this process. I deeply appreciated our board clerks linking. I know that was a tremendous amount of work, but made it so helpful to look and to review. I think, I don't know if there's less categories we can give it to try to make it, you know, easier. I'm not sure, you know, we had an E, R, C, and an I, but I felt good about that. It was just clunky in what we do with those that are not clear edits that, you know, we have more to talk about. That still feels a little bit slippery, but overall, I thought this was a really good move toward reviewing a batch of policies together.
Mike, do you feel like it would be more beneficial to either put approve or talk about one or the other?
Possibly, yeah, because
Even if that just meant a comment or just a grammatical change, but that way, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's where I'm with you, Betsy, because there were so many categories, it might have made it a little more difficult, you know, because it created like a.
Yeah, which I appreciated the opportunity to say.
No, it was great.
Right, yeah.
But maybe that's something that we learned from, that we just say, you know, we need to edit this and approve it or what.
Yeah, looks good, or let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I agree with Trustee Kip that I was so appreciative. I thought it was a really easy way to look through it. I appreciated that I had time to sit at my house when I had time to really sit and read through it and not try to digest it at a board meeting where you feel like we're going to be here all night. You know, I liked that, being able to look through it and make sure I really understood it without asking questions like, do I get this or do I not get this, you know, which I think is important. But maybe just either, and I didn't have a problem with it, but it is maybe confusing. I had to like have a little chart of like, what letter am I going to put in now? So maybe like I either have a comment or a question, or it's good. Maybe that would be helpful, but I'm also open to anyone else's opinion as well. And that's not set in cement for me.
And by the way, we documented what we did there in that last column, so that if you have questions, then
it's very helpful.
We can go back and remember what we were thinking.
Yeah, that's great.
I agree, kind of thinking more along the lines of that we're not necessarily gonna fine tooth comb, go through every single one of these. More of a need to change. Good as is kind of thing. Kind of marking, thinking kind of more along that lines, like what's the urgent? I know some of mine that, you know, that I put eyes on, like I was thinking about, where I was like, yeah, I just want a little more time to wrestle and read this, but it's not, there's nothing pressing me to say like, we have to adopt this policy, whether it's ISBA's or our own, like, do you know what I mean? So I felt like it didn't really give the urgency to like what should float to the top of the list, where maybe there's some way we could work to tweak that a little bit, where we kind of get these are the ones that we're super motivated to tweak or change or implement if we don't have them already in our policies.
And true to ISBA, there are several of these in this list. I wonder if a previous board hadn't looked at them, because several of them really are more procedural instead of policy. So I wonder, I have no evidence, I didn't go back and look. I wonder if somebody had said, yeah, you know, we do this, and maybe it's a handbook reference or something like that. But certainly there were several people who had interest in them, and we just didn't know what next steps were.
I wonder about our, you know, just kind of our norm for the board to bring things, you know, add to the agenda or bring things up as, you know, if two bring it, and kind of along those lines, like if two people, two trustees say, yep, we really want to do a deep dive into this, then it goes to committee to be reviewed and really looked at and come through.
And so then we wondered, if we had two, for example, would we say, hey, Trustee Westfall, trustee Simpson, here are the 5 that had 2. Would you look at them for recommendation to bring forward or not? Is that maybe what?
Yeah.
I think everybody, I mean, I think, I don't know that I would want to put it onerous on just the 2 that asked for it. I think.
Well, there are policy.
There are policy people, that's why, yeah.
Policy committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah,
So, okay, so I think then it wouldn't be that any of us would ask for that. It would be at the workshop. We would be going through that next series. And if 2 did say, then it goes to policy committee.
Yeah.
And then it comes back.
Yeah.
For the first read for everybody.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right.
Sounds good, because then we're still looking at all of them. Everybody still kind of has that same thought process on it.
I think 2 is a good trigger.
Okay. I also then wondered about, because I do feel like, I mean, I went through every single, it's a lengthy list, but I went through every single one of them. And so then I'm wondering if there were things that we didn't say needed to be revised and we were good with, we talked about those things. I'm almost thinking could go on the next in a similar fashion of the review process like we did tonight. Where we said, did we not do it? No, it was in the consent agenda, right?
Yeah, so those things that you, and you can now just say you reviewed them on this date because you didn't have any.
And that was everything else
Yes.
on here? Okay, so that's, I wanted to make sure, because I didn't have a cross-reference when I looked at those.
We took the easy part first.
Okay, perfect.
Although there might be a comment that says, I wonder if this would change. It didn't change the policy, but if,
Yeah.
And then we took the small edits, and then we took the friend policy. What did we do with it?
Perfect, okay. Does that, I feel like that gave some guiding or?
We have
no?
one other question.
Okay.
Kirk Wallen went through and linked all of the ISBA policies, even for our current policies. I'm wondering, since maybe 2016, all of those policies have been based on an ISBA policy. Do you want those links still? Because they're really based on an ISB policy, or just the ones that we don't have or that were built in 1870.
Let me ask a question about that. Do we know which ones are based on an ISBA policy? Like, is that in, so in other words, if you're looking at 1260 and you read the content of it, does it say at the bottom, this is based on an ISB policy? Thus, does that make sense?
No, I think probably, so no. And
Okay.
like on this sheet, you can see that there are 2 or 3 that weren't based on the
Right.
ISBA policy because they didn't have anything close to it.
Yeah.
And then I think that there would be a group that say, certainly in the time that I've been here, so 2017 on, everything that has been brought to you comes from an ISBA, but you may still want to see it. I was just wondering how much fun you had.
If it was for me, I'll just answer it, if it was based on an ISB policy, then I don't need to see the ISB policy, but if there isn't some reference, then I would like to have that research. I had to go to look at that. Does that make sense? But that's not helpful. That's not helpful guidance if you don't know.
Still a lot of reading, or just
Yeah.
brainstorming ways to streamline.
Yeah.
And we'll do
I
that.
actually kind of liked having it there. I mean, I know it's a pain. And I am happy to help come June. I am happy to help with further, like really linking those things, because I do know it is a huge pain, but I thought it was kind of nice just to have a comparison,
So I have access to link the ones that we had purchased years ago. There will be a point where we probably can only link you to the Idaho School Boards Association website that you go and you have to scroll through all of it with unless that we buy their policies regularly.
Okay.
And the majority of these, I mean, we first saw these, this was like 2013.
Right.
So these drafts are They're fairly old.
Old, okay.
So how did you come up with these? You went on their website, you scrolled through and you linked it?
No, the ones that are linked, the district purchased these when we started down the policy change path years ago,
Okay.
when I first started this.
And if it was
second
new
year's clerk.
since the time that we bought it, you'll notice that in some of these, you have a whole section of ISBA and you have to scroll down in order to actually find it.
Yeah.
So we either didn't purchase it or it's new since the time we purchased it.
Do we continue to purchase a minimum subscription to get the ones after the legislature?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
The handbook, because we talked about that last, because it was, things get scooped in the handbook and can we finalize that and we could just refer to that? Because that's sort of
Yeah.
our procedures, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where you find it, is that known?
Yeah. So like you're saying, like a link to the ISBA
Yeah, or just put it
page or
on
to this document or.
the handbook that we were creating for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we had it posted on our board website or something, or a page reference,
Yeah.
you know.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that idea.
I do also like the SBA links to the originals to know on that. I was unfortunately gonna also ask how much sooner we can get them so that we can all get in and start reading them a little earlier as well. And I know that's a lot, like for the next series and the next workshop, of getting them all in.
And we're not due to review any additional series till the fall.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought we had a monthly schedule.
And summer's off.
Summer's off
We're
because,
starting that, okay.
yeah, so that was
Thank you.
last month. Last month we discussed that and approved that with the,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah. Because remember, I just threw in like,
So then maybe we
here's
do
a
have some
schedule and
time
then,
over the summer even to get them in and then kind of.
and then build it so that it's there. Yeah.
That's
So we will
awesome.
We're planning on the summer to build out those other.
That would be really helpful,
platforms.
even, yeah,
Yeah.
that's to start reading ahead.
Beach reading, huh?
All right,
So-
thank you.
Legal update.
There is not a legal update.
I think I saw Maren on, but I'm not aware of any.
She popped up. She texted.
Okay, perfect. Superintendent comments. I wanted to review those budgets with you. Mr. Dewey did that for us. Wanted to bring you an update on vaping. I think Trustee Ross asked us about it. I have confirmed that we do teach it in health at both the middle school and high school. So we do have curriculum. They're creative on how they get it. We're working with BSU on one set of curricula to talk about vaping. And then we do have I'm struggling with it. My administrator notices it, or my teacher notices it. We do have access to a class that takes specific students through it, trying to help understand the health impact. So just wanted to follow up because we didn't have a great answer for there. At your desk, you have 2 brochures. We have some opportunities coming up in the community to really talk about our programs. So what you're seeing there is NOVA and recruiting. That's a K-12 program. We have, how many kids at this point? 400-ish who have committed to staying. We'd like to boost that just a little bit more. And then middle school options. So this board approved some of the specific ones. Our comprehensive middle schools have also designated kind of a focal point. And so we just wanted you to see some of the advertisement that we're working on. Upcoming things, Tammy has sent you graduation invites as you finalize what your plans are. That will help us. We'd love to have at least a trustee at each of the graduations, realizing that committing to 6 or 7 is tough. But so if we can see the whole picture, then maybe we can be specific at, hey, we need someone to go to somewhere. ISBA spring training, it is scheduled for Meridian. on May 6th at the West Ada from 1 to 4. Tammy sent that out. We haven't heard from everybody. So if that is something that you're still interested in, we'd love to be able to sign you up and give you that opportunity. There looked like there were some great topics. Summer school applications are all in. We will have lots. Mr. LeBou, how many did we sign? So anyway, each of our regular middle schools are doing a summer program again, boosting those numbers based on needs of kids. Our high schools each have their own personal trends. We have a comprehensive high school. We have that's across the whole district. We have an advanced opportunities high school for students that want to take advanced placement or concurrent credit or to get ahead. Our specific programs like Union, they have a summer program as well. So pretty comprehensive. And then elementary are working on at least 4 sites that I'm aware of who will offer some summer catch up or lead on or something for our elementary students. And then the last thing, I just wanted you to note in the consent agenda, we had quite a few resignations and retirements. We're actually really pleased. We think that's the result of incentivizing people because now it's like crickets. So normally where we would be seeing things come in pretty quietly, tentatively, we think that strategy might have worked in helping people identify early so that our buildings can now post and hire now versus later. So didn't want you to be alarmed that there were several there. If that's the number we end up with, that's a great number as far as retention goes.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what I have for you.
Am I allowed to ask a question on your comments? I'm just curious because I didn't know that our middle schools had like an area of focus. Is this how it's been for a while or is this new? Okay. Okay. I was like, oh, this is new to me. Can you just tell me, I'm curious what the words diverse student choice means for East Valley?
Yeah, so Mr. Christ and his team had a difficult time coming up with what it is, but it's actually quite a great idea talking about giving middle schools. I should let you explain that, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're exactly right.
It's really cool.
It's kind of like creating exploratory tracks. For the students. So you kind of use the term college, but you don't use college because that might bring some.
Yeah.
So there's one that's humanities, and so you're exploring band and orchestra and music and maybe some art, and then there's some that are more science oriented, and so some other additional math electives or our engineering programs or robotics. And 2 others that I saw.
Right, and really driven. We came back and talked to both high school students and to some current middle school students about what would have made middle school even better.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could improve on it.
Right. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean,
We're excited for them.
it's not a knock on middle school, it's just hard years. That's all I'm saying. Hard years. Not
Awkward puppy years.
Yes, I'm not talking about the education, I'm talking about.
And our hope was to remain strong in our core areas, but then give students a lot of choice based on their interests to explore in
I think
order
that's
to build
exciting.
relationships and deepen their engagement.
Yeah, thank you for the answer.
Great question.
And I hope I did not offend anyone. That was not enough.
No.
We all related.
Everyone smiled under their masks, I thought, so.
Yeah. Right. Board self-assessment. So,
Trustee comments.
oh, sorry. Yes, I was trying to jump ahead. Sorry. Trustee comments. I'm going to start on the other side. So trustee Kip,
No further comments.
trustee Rath.
So I want to, when we got all our Wednesday 4-day or 5-day inputs and comments, then we also inadvertently got, what does the next school year conversation look like? And then also as I was going onto the NSD website, so I guess 2 things. We started with the charge of doing the fall reopening plan. right, over the summer. And then we changed it to the school year plan. And so I wanted to say, I wanted to revisit that it was just the school year plan. Are we intending on ending that at the end of the school year that's coming up? Wondering if we should be thinking forward to that or not. So I'm throwing that out there because I started to hear those questions come at us when we were getting that feedback, to start to think about what does that mean? Does that plan stop and be done? And I'm also hoping that on the website, the quarantine procedures in the plan, both documents, the quarantine references January and it was updated in March, and the NSD reopening plan references a February date, which was also updated in March. So maybe both of those could get updated to reflect the last month's changes in both of those on the website. And then maybe just a question to, what are those supposed to sunset or not, or what were the thoughts? I don't know the answer to that either. So thanks for listening to my random comments.
Trustee,
I have no comments. Yeah, a future agenda item of what does next year look like? And when I heard from staff, many of them I tried to say, because they advocated hard for keeping Wednesdays the way it is, you know, is this something you'd like to see continued in the future as a 4-day week? You know, and almost all of them were like, yeah. So is this what's good for kids? We certainly heard lots of folks who said it is.
That was the comment that I wanted to bring up. I highly recommend, if you can get a chance to go to Columbia High School. Thoroughly impressed with the work, and hopefully you guys realize as a board, and I know some of you weren't here, but this wasn't an overnight thing at Columbia High School. Columbia High School has been working for years now on intervention and how do we help our students and how do we make sure. And what I saw was very focused, very targeted. There were accountability pieces. The kids check in, they get a piece of paper, and it was like, what are you working on today? And then to check out, they have to put like, what did they get accomplished that day? So accountability pieces there. You know, the research on intervention says if it's part of the school day, there's higher success, because otherwise it feels like it's punitive, right? Like, why do these guys just get a longer lunch and we have to stay in at lunch and do work, right? So, but I did talk a lot, and I've been sharing and talking to a lot of people throughout the valley and across the state about what I saw over there, because it's exciting. And that was one of my first questions was, is this something that we could continue with? And they bring kids in 9:30 to 1:30. And my thinking was, yeah, we bring everybody in 9:30 to 1:30, but they go to their mentor classes. Now I'm not using the term correctly. Is that what it is? But really, and having those conversations, it's not a rigid, like bells are ringing and people are rushing and not enough time. Like, it's a totally different feel in that building. And so that's same thing I want to talk about. What does next year look like, and how do we do things to help these kids? Because in all reality, we all need intervention coming out of this year. Like, and if people say they don't, I'm going to say you need to pause and reflect a little bit. Like, we all need some intervention and a little bit of more support and some flexibility to increase and make some gains in these next years and moving forward. So
let me just comment, or maybe ask a question to clarify on what you're saying. In my experience as a parent of Columbia High School students last year, so before pre-COVID, Wednesday was an intervention day where the students did have a completely different type of school day on Wednesdays. All students went to school, buses ran normal, lunch bell was normal, but at least my students went to a mentor classroom where they spent the day, and then the mentor teacher, if they needed to work with another teacher, they could send them those kinds of things. Well, I guess my question would be, and maybe this is for a different day, but my wheels are spinning really quick, so I'll ask, is that something that's been considered at other high schools? I know Columbia runs a little bit different than the other two schools. Traditionally, they're on a different, I don't know what it is that they're
So
called. They do.
all of our schools are talking about schedules right now, realizing that that mentoring piece is really, really important. And then how do we build remediation? Yeah, would you say more?
Yeah, no, I think Columbia has really done an exceptional job with that. And as a mastery-based school, they kind of have a little more flexibility with that. But really, that model is what's kind of been adopted. And a lot of the wonderful things that are going on at Columbia, our other two high schools are taking some of those things and seeing them as advantageous for students.
So I guess my question is, how much of this I know we're policy, not procedure, right? So board puts their fingers in or not. I mean, is this up to the administration at each high school to decide how they would like to run? How much of that does the board have input in versus, and maybe this is a conversation for another day and we need to go to home, but.
Yes, I would see the big umbrella in that. You would hold us accountable that we have to meet those expectations for instructional hours and making sure that students are engaged. So today we met with the middle school folks. They all have a very specific plan for both intervention and for advisory or mentoring, and it looks a tad bit different. Two of them are kind of aligned and the other two are a tad bit different. So I guess I have assumed that as long as we're meeting those requirements and they have come to the secondary director and we talked through that in our umbrella of non-negotiables. So you're meeting their needs, you have a strong core, you have a plan for those who haven't yet got it. What's your plan for those who do have it? That if they've met all of those expectations, that they would have some flexibility, not, within that day.
Right.
To create appropriate environments.
Good. Thanks, that just helps me.
So I'm looking at your faces, they're trying to determine if we're on the same page.
And this might be a conversation for another day, so I apologize, but as my wheels are spinning, I appreciate
It's a
just
great question.
clarifying in my mind, so thank you, appreciate that. Sorry to totally jump on your comments, when I said no comment and then I lost on.
This would be a great conversation that you'd hear at cabinet on Friday mornings as we're bringing plans and we're thinking through them and saying, what are the consequences? Does that impact other things? And what way does it impact other things? How does it help kids? Does it help kids? What does the research say about it?
Awesome.
Excellent. Perfect. Board self-assessment.
That was me. So I actually gave us satisfactory. I almost said a needs improvement on staying within order of focus and agenda, but really we did. We just questioned, should we be doing this? And then we went, nope, and we went right back to, to where we needed to be. So I think there was some great discussion. I think everybody was courteous. We did follow parliamentary procedure, and even though we veered and felt comfortable with each other to ask those questions and do those things, which I think is awesome. We ultimately, I think, stayed on track, had good, clear distinction between the roles of board and staff. Again, I almost said no, but we talked about it. And then we said, nope, this is policy, this is procedure, and then came back. So, so I think we did great.
Thank you, Jen. So next upcoming meetings, May 3rd at 6:30 p.m. is our board work session. And then the regular meeting for May is on the 17th at 6:30 p.m. And then I would entertain a motion.
Be resolved that the Board of Trustees of Nampa School District number 131 recess from a public meeting into executive session in the manner and for the purpose authorized by section 74-206 Idaho Code to discuss matters pertinent to the district, specifically subsection 1B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student.
I'll second.
It was moved by trustee Kip and seconded by trustee Ross. Roll call vote.
Trustee Westphal. Aye. Trustee Ross. Aye. Trustee Kip.
Aye.
Trustee Keller. Aye. And Simpson.
Aye. We'll resume our open session and I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to place employee number 41422021A on paid administrative leave from April 14th to April 16th.
Read that number again.
Number,
Different in the document than.
Oh, it is?
It is, but that's what needs to be.
I
Which one is
believe
the correct
April
one?
13th to 16th.
oh, that's not what this says. Okay.
It's not, because I got a text in the middle of the meeting.
Oh. So it is the 13th to the 16th? Sorry, yeah.
Okay, so
Sorry.
did I have the correct number?
Yes.
Should be 0413.
Oh,
Okay. So should I try that again?
yeah,
Yes,
let's
please.
try it again.
Okay, Madam Chair, I make a motion to place employee number 04132021A on paid administrative leave from April 13th to April 16th.
Second.
Perfect. It was moved by trustee Kip, seconded by trustee Westfall. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any, sorry, all those opposed say nay. Abstain. Okay, it's approved unanimously. And let's adjourn. Woo-hoo.